Hello and welcome back to the Curious Life podcast. I am so honoured and privileged to be sitting with you today. Kristi McVee, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, I was telling you a little bit before we started recording that I have been following you for a while now, and I am a big advocate for child safety and education and talking about all the things. I often post things on social media and gets really mixed results. So I would love to chat with you about some of that. But obviously you've been in the media a huge amount in the last couple of weeks because of the horrors of what have unfolded here in Victoria. But the worst part about all of that, as I'm sure you will attest to, is that that sort of thing is happening every single day. And I don't know if we know it, if it's in that level of magnitude, if it's that many kids, but these sorts of things are happening every single day. This is not a unique, outrageous situation. This is literally happening everywhere. And I think that's the thing that maybe parents are starting to come to terms with. So you have been the go-to for child safety, and in fact, this is what you do, and we can get into that case in a little bit. But I'd love to kind of start by asking you a bit about your work as a police officer and an investigator in the very specialised kind of work that you were doing. How did you get into that world?
Yeah, so when I first started, it was when my daughter was actually, she was about 9 months old when I saw an ad for the police, and it was like, we want women and we offer, flexible working arrangements. And had a 9-month-old at home at the time, and I was like, oh, I could do that. I don't know why the idea just cemented in my brain. And the crazy thing is I never thought I would be a police officer. I'd never had any dreams or goals to be a police officer. Didn't want to be one when I was a kid or anything like that. But I saw this ad and they made it sound so exciting. So I told all my family, I think I'm going to apply to become a police officer. And they all laughed at me because I'm only 5'1". I'm very short. And they thought, how are you going to jump the fences and all of the things? And I said, if there's a will, there's a way. That was always my kind of belief. And so I started training to get into the police, and I finally got accepted in January 2010. So I started in the West Australian Police, and my daughter turned 2 about a month later. So she was such a young baby. And when I first joined the police, I just thought, I'm going to help people. And that was kind of what I wanted to do. But within the first week of being in the police, I went to my first child abuse case, and that kind of was the theme of most of my, first responding to child abuse, or to go and talk to parents who had something happen. And then within a year, the OIC of because I was in a regional centre, I was in like rural Western Australia, up in the Pilbara, and the OIC of the detective said, who wants to be a specialist child interviewer? It's a specialist training that they sent us on. And so I put my hand up to go. And by that stage, my daughter was only 3 years old, and I went off to Perth. I got trained up, and that's where I learned so much about child sexual abuse, grooming behaviours, predatory behaviours, how prevalent it is. And when I came back from that training 5 weeks later, I started interviewing children who had been sexually abused and abused. And pretty much most of my career was, for the 10 years I was in the police, was based around child sexual abuse investigations and interviewing children. I did have some other stints in other places. I'd do a couple of months here and a couple of months there. But most of the time I came back to child abuse. And then when I became a detective, I put my hand up to go into the child abuse squad as well, and investigate child sexual abuse cases and historical abuse cases. And then at the end of my career for the last 2 years, I spent time interviewing children, investigating their cases, arresting and charging their offenders if there was enough evidence, and then also managing child sex offenders when they were released from prison. So that was the last 2 years of my career. And as you can imagine, that left its toll. I actually had quite a lot of vicarious trauma from listening to the cases that I saw. and, investigating the cases. And so I ended up with PTSD and severe anxiety first, and then because I didn't listen to my body, PTSD second. And I think I had PTSD for a lot longer than when I was diagnosed. And so I came home to my family crying and saying I've been diagnosed with PTSD, and my then 11-year-old nearly 12-year-old said to me, "Mum, I don't want you to do this job anymore. You're not the same mum I remember."
Wow.
And so I went in and resigned the next day, and retired from the police after 10 years. It was exactly 10 years and 1 day. So
Wow.
I finished up with the WA police. And when I left the police, it was, again, because my daughter needed me and because my family meant more to me than the job. Luckily, I was able to see that was more important. But I always felt like I had let down. I had been letting down kids, and I wanted to do more for kids. And I always felt like I had failed them by leaving. So I kept thinking, if parents knew what I knew and if people knew what I knew, then maybe they would be able to protect kids and they would be able to prevent abuse. Because when you're a police officer, you're always coming after the fact. You're not actually helping protect kids. You're actually just helping them after something's happened. And so I knew from my experiences and from all the kids I'd talked to that if they knew what red flags and warning signs to watch out for, those tricky behaviours to watch out for, if they knew about body safety, and if parents knew more about that, then they actually had more of a chance of preventing abuse before it happened. So I wrote a book about it. It's called Operation KidSafe, A Detective's Guide to Child Abuse Prevention. And then I started talking about it on social media, and here we are today. I had the biggest week of my life last week talking about that horrific case in Victoria. And I think the thing is most people think it doesn't happen in their family or community, but I can recite all of the stats. They're embedded in my brain. And it happens it's not everyone, but it can be anyone, and it happens everywhere and in every community.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? I've worked in child protection, and I've worked with victims of crime, and I've worked at the coroner's court, and for a long time I felt like my perspective on the world was warped because I looked out of the side of my eye at every man who was affectionate to a child in front of me, or at the crossing guards, or at the Santa Claus at the shopping centre, or at all of these people that put themselves in the pathway of children because that was the only population I was working with. But I think what that does is just it has opened my eyes to the realities of this world. And we can't pretend that these things happen. Like, it's happening, as you say, in every community, everywhere. So I can't understand when parents don't want to know about it. So I've been quite vocal on my social media from time to time about people sharing photos of their kids online. And I'm friends with influencers and well-known people online, and they are showing their kids 24/7. And I cannot understand it. Anybody who wanted to has access to those kids. In fact, the entire world has access to those kids. Anyone could put the pieces together very quickly, where they live, what schools they go to. And when I make posts like that, I'll get a handful of comments that'll be like, I completely agree. I don't show my kids either, and these are the reasons why. And then there'll be other people that just think, oh, look, it's ridiculous. Why shouldn't they be allowed to share their kids, and it's part of their life and it's because I have peeked behind the curtain and I know what the risks are, and it may not happen to you or to the person next to you, but it could happen to the other person or the well-known person. So, what are your thoughts in terms of online safety of kids' images and how people should be thinking about it, from the well-known people to everyday people?
Yeah, I this question comes up a lot, and I get a lot of, same as you, like lots of varied answers and replies. Some parents are like, "No, I would never share my kid's photo. It's not my photo to share." And then other people are like, "Oh, it's just everyone. I can't control what other people do, so why should I be?" I think it's very selfish to think that you own your children's images. I think it's very selfish for you to think that you own your children full stop. You don't own your children. They are individuals autonomous to you, and they don't, our job is to shepherd them into adulthood and keep them safe until adulthood for them to then take the reins and do it for themselves. And when we have this ownership over them, when we think we own them, we are not protecting them, because we are not spending enough time thinking about them, protecting their image, protecting their safety. We do things to them that they don't might not like, or we don't consider what they want. I know that we make a lot of decisions for our children, especially in the early years, because that they can't choose for themselves. But when they get to a point that they can, it's time to ask them what they want, because it is partially their choice. And, some things people are like, but I can't give them all the choices. And I'm like, no, because some things are safety and well-being and, and just your family rules. That's okay. But at least explain them to them. And one of the things that I want to say about the sharing of individual photos of your children, who are you sharing them for? Because you're not sharing them to keep your kids safe. You're sharing them to make yourself feel better. Mm-hmm. And I stopped sharing my child's images a long time ago. And the only people who see my child's image, and she's nearly an adult, is the people I would have that would sit down at my dinner table. And I have the dinner table rule for a reason. If you can't have someone sitting down at your dinner table, having a meal with you and sharing a meal with you and your family, then why should they see any photos of your kids? Because that your children don't know them and they don't know you, and you can't guarantee that they're a safe individual for your kids. So that is how I live. That's what I recommend. I've had a lot of influencers who've reached out to me and changed their sharing policies and guidelines because of what after a while of listening to me talk about this. Look, I'm not about blaming and shaming parents. I actually spend a lot of time in the same circles you probably do with influencers and people contacting me, and I glance at their profiles and I think, oh gosh, please don't do this to your kids. And it's not because your kids aren't beautiful and they're not amazing and you're not proud of them. It's not about that at all. But I have had 8 and 9-year-old children, when I used to present in school, say to me, how do I get my parents to stop sharing my photos? Because we talk to them about not talking to strangers and sharing their images with strangers, and we teach them about online safety, yet we're completely disregarding their online safety when we share it with our friends and they've never met them before. And most people have about a third of their friends on Facebook or any private, private profile we don't even know most of these people. We got conditioned to believe that we should accept every person's request, that, we need to be friends with this person and this person, because we had, social media's conditioned us. And a lot of the current generations of parents are coming up through those where they just had friends with everyone. So we need to dial it back a bit and remember that once upon a time we had a photo book that we had in our lounge room and we showed it to our friends, and we need to dial it back a bit and say, would I show these images to the people around the dinner table, or are these people that I don't even know? Do they deserve to see my kids? No.
Yep. Could not agree more. And
there's a rant for you.
I love it.
On my soapbox.
That's why you're here, because what people don't know is what is absolutely happening with those images. And we know there are terrible people on the dark web who doctor photos and create child abuse material and circulate it. It's not even necessarily if you don't want to believe that your child could be found in person and you want to keep believing that the world is a safe place, that's one thing. But the other part of it is what is happening online. And what would be your bet about every famous person's child who is on social media? Would you say that they are all likely to be on the dark web?
Well, here's the thing, and I had a very interesting view into what child predators do, right? And because I saw their phones and I saw the devices and I interviewed them and I asked them questions. And I can tell you now that every child sex offender and everyone I charged with abusing children had folders of children's images that were just everyday images that they had taken off social media or copied from their friends. They had images. They don't need a naked image of a child to get off on that image. They just need children. And if they can't get access to an actual child, they'll get the next best thing, which is a photo of them. And now that we have AI that they can just plug in an image and create their own child abuse material, they don't even need a child. But in saying that, we now have research that shows that people who watch child abuse material then go, like it's over 50% will go and seek out contact with a child straight after. Right. And that is increasing the risk to children, right? So I just don't think it's worth risking your child's image being in the hands of someone who wants to do harm with it. The other thing to consider, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that these predators, this is their whole purpose in life. They spend hours and hours and hours online researching families and looking up kids and looking up their, putting together the little puzzle pieces, right? So they can almost identify where your kid goes to. If you put too much online, they can tell where they go to school. They can reverse image search. They can find out where you go shopping. They can do all of these things because all of these tools are readily available online now. But I want to bring you back to Cleo Smith over in Western Australia. She was taken from a camp, a camp in a tent and missing for 2 weeks. I honestly, I had just left the police, and when that situation happened, I thought she was gone. I thought she wasn't with us anymore. And I thought the worst had happened. And the worst happened to her, right? Regardless of the fact that she was found alive, the worst has happened to her. Yeah. She wasn't with her parents for 2 weeks. We don't know what happened in that 2 weeks. But what I want to bring attention to is that her mum, and no shame to her mum, she didn't know any better, but her mum had a public Instagram page where she shared a photo of Cleo standing in her nightie or in her pajamas in front of the tent, tagged the location that they were at the night of the actual abduction, and he was a follower on her page. If that isn't enough to scare you from tagging where you go and sharing where you are and where you take your kids, then I don't know what is, because that could happen to any family if the right person is obsessed with your child or your family.
Yeah. I mean, I get horror chills thinking about it. Like, it is just so easy. And I think the whole of Australia was sitting on the edge of our seats following that story. And it was 1 day, it was 2 days, it was 3 days, it was a week. And I think we were all running through all of those scenarios too. Like, what would you want the outcome to be? Because, as you say, both situations are the worst possible scenario. Of course, you don't want her to be gone, but at the same time, what kind of trauma is she going to be living with for the rest of her life about whatever happened to her for those 2 full weeks, which is such a long time for a little person in such a short period of life. So, yeah, I mean, taking these risks, it just blows my mind. And I remember when I first started this podcast years ago, my eldest child, I remember we were being interviewed during COVID actually about childcare fees going up. And they wanted to come and they took a photo of us as a family for the newspaper. And he was asking me then about sort of primitive questions about Instagram and social media and is that going to go on my Instagram, and trying to understand what that meant. And I said to him, well, if I put something on my Instagram, then it means the whole world can see it. And he was absolutely adamant. He did not want his photo anywhere. And I was sort of just asking him, I was never going to do it, but, would you want your photo on my Instagram? And he says, no, I don't want the whole world to see me. Please don't ever put my photo. And as he's now gotten older, he's almost 9 in a couple of weeks. And, there's YouTube and there's YouTubers, and his eyes have been opened to the world in a completely different way now. And he will say to me, oh, yeah, you can take a picture of me. Here, do you want to do a video of me for your Instagram? I'm like, absolutely not, because the whole world does not need to see you. So when you're an adult, if you want to make videos for the world to see, that's up to you. But I won't be doing that now. So like, even for that little ego of a 9-year-old boy, he's starting to kind of ignore all the risks that as a very young person he was actually aware of. And I think the same can be said for parents. Like that thrill of the like and the subscribe and the positive comments seems to override what is really a simple
Yeah.
matter of your child's safety.
Yeah, and it's glamorized, right? These
Mm.
kids see these YouTube kids that are, unpacking things and playing games, and
Mm-hmm.
like they're looked at as like these special people. And we've got that many documentaries and that many
Yeah.
things seeing that children are exploited all the time online. Not to
Mm-hmm.
mention, my daughter went through that same phase of like, oh, it'd be so cool to be an influencer, and it would be so cool to be like on YouTube and be famous. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I've now grown to this like influencer status, if you want for a better word. Like, to me, that blows my mind. I'm just here talking my truth. And she's like, don't show me. I don't want people to know who
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm proud of you. I love you, but don't show me online. I do not want
Yeah.
anyone to see me. And I would never do that to her,
Yeah.
because it's her choice. It's her body, her choice. If I
Yeah.
want to be a safe adult and safe parent and to respect my child's bodily autonomy, then I have to listen to what she wants. And even before she got to an age, like, who can consent to this at
Totally.
9? No
Yeah.
one, like, they don't understand the potential repercussions of being shared online, and millions of people seeing it, potential millions of people seeing it.
Yep.
It has massive implications that we don't even realize it yet.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And it's
personally, I think it's really important to protect your kids first and worry about this stuff second. Like, none of this is
totally.
important at the end of the day.
None of it is. No. And, the internet lives forever. So even, you see a lot of this happens in America. You'll see like mum influencers who are talking about really intimate things about their child, or filming their meltdowns, or their daughter's first period, or, like all of these things that benefit them, you know, monetarily or whatever it is. And then these videos of their kids live forever. And what kid wants to go for a job interview and the boss is doing a little Google search and there's you having a meltdown on the floor or talking about your first period? I mean, it's like, it just makes no sense to me at all.
It's hugely disrespecting and disgusting, and but it's been normalized. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel sorry for the parents who think this is okay, because they
Mm.
have been brainwashed into believing that this is a normal. And it's other parents who validate them, make them feel good about themselves by sharing it, but it's also the social media companies and these companies who are continually
Yeah.
conditioning us to believe that we have to share all of our, wherever we go, we need to share. Whatever we do, we need to share. So, I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
victim of it too, because I'm slightly obsessed with Instagram. So, not slightly, a
We
lot
all
of
are,
obsessed
right?
with Instagram. So, I think I need but I do turn my phone off, or like, delete the apps for a weekend, and I do have detoxes where I just, go off, because I know that it's a bit out of control, and I'm aware of it. So if anyone wants to send me an idea of how I can stop, because I think from me, I get lots of direct messages and a lot of parents asking questions, and I feel so like, oh, I just want to help everyone. So that's my biggest
Mm,
flaw. But I'm not sharing anything with anyone that doesn't. Like, I don't share much about my family at all. It's all about my
yeah.
job and my work. So
Yeah, and as it should be, and that is how the internet can be a fantastic tool, that you can reach a global audience, and instead of sitting in the room with one person and their family, you are able to support anyone in the world, and that's a wonderful thing.
exactly.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think, as
exactly.
you say, it's just about educating and continuing to have these conversations, because it's not going away. The internet's not going away. The way that our society is operating is not going away. But there are things that come up sometimes, and I feel like a complete pariah when it comes to child safety when I raise these things with friends or colleagues, and there are two issues that you've actually spoken a lot on. And one of them is the issue of sleepovers. Now, I have 3 boys, and people can't believe that I feel weird about sleepovers for a boy, which in itself is ridiculous and outrageous, because boys get abused. It's not, exclusive to girls. But I would love to hear your thoughts, because again, having worked in child protection and worked very closely with kids that have been in horrific situations, immediately I think about the risks, and they're out of your sight. You can't do anything about it. And, the feedback I get from friends, like, oh, really? No sleepovers? But, oh, they were the best part of my childhood. Like, wow, how amazing. You had a safe childhood. That's brilliant. But how can you be sure that your child is going to have a safe experience? Oh, because, they're they're our friends, they would never. Like, okay, well, let's go back to the statistics and, who generally is doing the abuse of children. It's people the children know. So, talk to me about sleepovers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, and you've just covered it beautifully, sleepovers, when you send your child to someone else's home, you have no control over what happens in that house. And, statistically speaking, 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys in Australia will be sexually abused before 18. And 30 to 50% of all sexual abuse is by another child. So when we think about sleepovers, it can be either an adult or another child who abuses your child, or your child is the one harming someone else's child based on what they've seen online. And a lot of people don't, or if something happens to them and then they do it to someone else. And we're seeing this younger and younger and younger, because of the fact is it takes less than 60 seconds for a child to find pornography online when they have unrestricted, unsupervised access online. So this is the thing we need to be really mindful of, is that as children and as out there caregivers and their protectors, we can't just go and blindly trust anyone. Over 90% of all sexual abuse is someone known to them. And in my experience, 47% of it will be someone in the family. Someone in the family can abuse your own child. It's a non-immediate family member, so like a grandparent, an uncle, or a cousin, and then an actual parent, and then siblings. So we need to be mindful, and that's around 47% of all child sexual abuse to girls. To boys, it can be a range of peer-based abuse by another peer, and then also, someone known to them like a family member, and then, it just varies. So like that stranger danger message, and that it's, it won't happen in my family, that, that is the stupidest thought you can ever have. And I don't mean to be so in your face about this, but when we think it can't, it's not my family, well, you know what? The universe will prove you wrong straight away, because every family has been touched by child sexual abuse. In fact, recent statistics say that 28.5% of adult Australians walking around have been sexually abused. So over 1 in 4 Australians have been sexually abused in their childhood. So we know, I know people tell me all the time, but, you could have 4 of you and 1 of you has been abused at least once, and it increases with women, right? So my daughter had a group of friends last year and the year before, and they, there was 5 or 6 of them in the group, and my daughter was the only one who hadn't been sexually abused. Wow. And that's quite high in regards to that. But if we're going to send our kids off to someone's house, we want to know that that is a safe home. Are they allowing children where are they sleeping? Who's going to be there? Is there other adults there that you don't know, or they're allowing other adults to be around your children that you've never met before? And that can happen. Are the children unsupervised because, they're all together, they'll be all right, because that's where harm happens between peers by child to child abuse. Lots of different things can happen. Do they have access online? Are they looking at pornography or sharing each other pornography between each other? Because that's another form of abuse. And it also once they've seen it, they tend to go, well, let's try that. So, or let's do that to this child who's younger than us. And my first job straight out of the academy, 1 week in, I'd been in training for 6 weeks, was going to a home where a child had just been at a sleepover at her best friend's house. She was 11 years old, and the family had had a party the night before while she was at this family sleepover. And someone who was known to the family was drunk, stayed and snuck into the girls' room and abused the 11-year-old girl.
Mm.
She was awake, she froze, she couldn't move, she didn't just say anything, didn't do anything, whilst her best friend, the family of the house, was sleeping right next to her while she was sexually abused by this male in the home. And that was the first one. I heard that over and over and over again. I hear stories of, kids going to families' houses where the older cousin sexually abuses them, or the grandparent sexually abuses them, or someone else sexually abuses them. So it's not, you said, Yana, you said, well, I saw it. I know this is why we don't have sleepovers. I don't think there's anything wrong with not having sleepovers. But if you're going to, make sure you're making it for the right decisions, not because it was some beautiful memory for yourself. Do it with an informed, empowered viewpoint and empower your kids before they go. But even still, like I said, that poor little 11-year-old, she felt frozen. A lot of children freeze when they're being abused, especially if it's not something that's ever happened to them before. Mm-hmm. If they're not prepared and they don't know what to do in those cases, they're just going to freeze.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, the other thing that I hear from a lot of people is that they don't want their kid to miss out. So how would you talk to a parent who's saying, well, I just don't want her to be the only one not going or not to be invited or,
Why don't we make it normalized for us to say, well, you can come stay until 10 and I'm going to pick you up. Why? I grew up not having money. Like this is what I used to laugh at, because my daughter would say, but everyone else has got it and everyone else is doing it. I'm like, yeah, but when we don't have everything that everyone else has and we're not doing everything that everyone, like, the old saying, would you jump off the cliff if everyone else was doing it? Yeah. I used to say that a few times. I used to say things like, it's my job to protect you. And I can't guarantee your safety in that situation. And so therefore, if I don't listen to my early warning signs, those gut feelings that we get that tell us, this isn't a safe environment or this safe situation, then I wouldn't be doing my protective parent duty. And how about we talk to them about, having a sleep in where we pick you up at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then you come home. And you get to hang out and you get to come home, because nothing good ever happens after midnight anyway. All the bad stuff happens after midnight. Yeah. That's it. So and most kids get to, sleeping time and they're like, there's too many noises and I'm so wired from all the sugar and I can't really fall asleep anyway. And they come home in a mess the next day. Mm-hmm. So, let's normalize adults and parents, finding ways to make things happen. And quite frankly, like, I hate that saying of like, oh, well, they're going to miss out. Our kids are not missing out on anything at all. We overdo it. We give them too much. We give them too much stimulation. We give them too much of what they want. We never say no to them anymore. And it's not because, and what I have realized in my time in the police is that if you don't say no to your kids, they turn out like assholes. So I used to have like 18-year-olds at the pub trying to front up to me as a police officer because they've never been told no and get out. And you'd say to them, and then their parents are still protecting them. So, we have to remember that as we parent our children through different ages, we need to prepare them for adulthood and what's the real realities of life. And you have to say no to your kids sometimes so that they're prepared for no when they get to an adult.
Yep. So well said. I completely agree with everything you have just said. But, I then, at the beginning of this year, and this will lead into my second question for you, but at the beginning of this year, we went to my kids' school and it was the grade 3 info night, and they're talking about school camp coming up at the end of the year. And from the teachers and from the parent committee people, they stood up on 2 separate occasions and said, so make sure they're ready for camp, lots of sleepovers, and not grandparents and the places where they're already comfortable. Make sure you're doing sleepovers with people they haven't had sleepovers with before. And I'm sitting in my chair almost exploding with rage and horror. And it took everything in me not to just like jump up and start screaming. It was horrific. I could not believe the messaging And so many parents are sitting there going, oh, yeah, oh, that's a good idea. Do your kids do sleepovers? Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I was just,
What the hell?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
the hell? Like, what is the? Here's my take on. And is this you're going to ask me about school camps, aren't you?
I am.
I don't think school camps are necessary until high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they're necessary. Tell me what the educational purpose of a school camp is.
Mm-hmm.
What is the educational purpose? What are we teaching our kids? What that they don't have, that they need to get more resilient and get out of their comfort zones? Is that what we want? Well, we can do that through freaking team sports.
Yep.
There is no educational purpose for a camp for children under the age of 12.
Mm-hmm.
And even older, I don't see the point of school camps anymore. Once upon a time, school camps were there because parents couldn't afford to go away. They couldn't take their children anywhere. They didn't have the money to go on family holidays.
Mm-hmm.
School camps. And, they're so stressful for teachers. I don't know why teachers are even like excited for these things, because how stressful to have 30 or 60 kids of, 9-year-olds going away for a night. Half of them are probably never, don't want to be there. Half of them are loving it because they're getting away from something that they don't, or the popular kids always look like, get to run amok and everyone else is excluded.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand the educational purpose. And if we're already struggling, our kids are already struggling educationally in Australia. So let's not do camps. I'd say no.
Yeah. And then I find
I
myself.
wouldn't be sending them on year 3.
Yeah. But then I find myself doing the same thing I just complained about, which is, oh, but then I don't want him to be the only one not going. And he's such a sporty outdoor kid. But then some parents are invited, a handful of parents are invited to come. And then I said, okay, well, maybe we're one of the families that absolutely goes. And does that help? I don't know where he'd be sleeping. Would we be in an adult room separate? And, he would still have the cabin experience. And I have to be perfectly honest with you, there's a kid that I'm extremely concerned about, that I've made complaints to the school about, that I know has access to things that have been relayed then to me through my son that are extremely concerning, like language he's using, indicating what very clearly is unsupervised at home. And we don't have devices. My kids don't have access. They don't have computers. They don't have iPads. They don't, we'll give them an iPad on a plane, with a few preloaded games, that sort of thing. But there's no unfettered use of the internet here. So I know my kids are protected from it in our house. And I don't want him alone with this person ever again. And then I'm being told he needs to be on sleepovers and going to camp. So,
he doesn't need anything. He doesn't
No.
need anything that you don't deem safe and reasonable. And I think this is the problem we have, is that as protective, safe adults and parents, we have our own values and beliefs, and we get to schooling, and then schools are telling us, no, well, this, that, and everything else. Other parents are telling us this, that, and everything else. There's such a pressure on parents to throw their values out the window and go along with the rest of the people. And it's not, it was really, I felt the pressure as well as a parent, and I felt the pressure when every time my daughter came home and asked for a game that I knew wasn't safe, or she wanted social media at 10 because all of her friends had TikTok, or, all of the things. The thing is that when you sit with yourself and you go, okay, does this does it add value to their lives? Does it make them, can I guarantee their safety? And what is the worst outcome that could happen? Okay, what's the worst outcome? I'm not saying to live in that worst outcome, but do I think that I'm ready for that to happen? Do I want my child to be exposed to that yet? Because here's the thing, we can't stop them from being exposed to, inappropriate or adult content online. It's not going to be a possibility because they can be shown it in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Are they going to have, we can't, always protect them from someone who wants to do them harm. But what can we put in place to help protect them so that they understand what's going on and then they can speak up about it? So if they're outside of our sphere of control, or, you know, they're out of camp and something happens and they freeze, would we be able to live with ourselves and live with the repercussions of that consequence? No, I don't think so. I mean, my daughter did do camps, but you know what? They were pony club camps or they were netball camps, and I was with her at all stages of it. Like, I was there, I was edgy, you know, I talk about, you know, if your kids are playing sport, I talk really heavily about being involved in the sport so that you can be there as a supporter in the background, helping change the safety standards of the club, you know, being one of those parents that speaks up for children who can't speak up for themselves. I was always, you know, on the committee or one of the parent helpers or helping in the kitchen, or, you know, so I was always there. No, I don't have to be in the lesson or in what she's doing or in what they're doing, but I could be, you know, just on the periphery, making sure she's okay, checking in with her during the, you know, the day, and, you know, she could still do what she needed to do. So if you are feeling like that there's pressure there to do these things, and you and your child have a conversation about it, you know, hey, I'm not really feeling safe about sending you to camp. You're only 8 or 9 years old. Like, we don't do sleepovers for a reason, and we've talked about that. But hey, I'm not sure. How do you feel about it? Do you think you're ready for camp? And most of the time they'll go, yeah, because everyone else is going. Okay, well, if you think you're ready, then I'm going to put my hand up as a parent helper so that I can be there just in case. Because I don't actually, like, my early warning signs, my gut feelings say that you're not ready, not because you're not ready, but because there could be some things happen that you don't know what to do with. Or, you know, you might be exposed to things you're not ready for. And you know what? It's my job to protect you. So I'm going to put my hand up as parent helper, and if they accept it, yep, we might say yes. When it's not 100%, but we might say yes. If they don't accept me as parent helper, then I think we're going to have to say no to this one and maybe consider it again next year or the year after. You know, it's not a no, it's a not yet, because you're not ready, or I'm not ready. Or as a family, this is our family values and these are our family rules. And, you know, they kind of go against our family rules, right? So, you know, get them to understand that it's not because you're saying no because you just want to ruin their lives and their fun. It's because it goes against those values that we have as a family.
That was so well put, and I will be playing this to my son's teacher in about November. But it's a really tricky one.
I mean, I think teachers, I think some teachers would be really like, okay if that they cancelled school camps.
Yeah.
Some teachers are like, I don't want to deal with 50, 60 kids. You know, I'm away from my family overnight. I don't get paid extra.
Yeah.
So, you know, like what is the benefit for anyone, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, it's and it's such a young age. You know, I remember going to school camp that young, and I remember a lot of anxiety. You know, I remember feeling anxious all the time. I don't remember any of the activities. I don't remember what we did, but I remember the feeling of like having to go and sleep away with my class when I would just wanted to be at home. So, I think,
and that's the beauty of having a safe childhood.
Yes, exactly.
When you feel safe at home, when you feel safe at home, you don't really want to be away from your home because, you know, I've got my own bed. I mean, my teenager, nearly adult, is like, I don't want to go and stay at people's houses. My bed's so much comfier. Like, I don't want to go and she is so like, she chooses not to do, like, if people ask her and she's like, yeah, I'll just come home.
Love it. I love that.
She's just I know she's a homebody, but that means that she feels safe and she's got the opportunity now. She's nearly an adult, but she just feels safer at home. And so, you know, I'm not going to like make that force her out into the world. She's the thing is that we can help our kids become independent and resilient without having to force them to do things that are really stressful and scary and anxiety driven.
Yeah. Yep. And look, the big kind of question I wanted to talk with you about as well, and I know we're running out of time here, but Obviously the case that happened in Victoria, where a childcare worker, as everyone knows, has been accused of, you know, terrible, terrible, terrible things. And I guess I have a young child as well in childcare, and thankfully we have a beautiful centre that is run so well, long-standing staff. We've been there now 8+ years. All my kids went through there. They've got all of those things in place, like glass panels everywhere. I remember when my eldest started there and he was starting to use the toilet, I'm like, oh my God, it's like so embarrassing. The kids are just there playing outside. You like thinking, is he not embarrassed? Like pulling down his pants, going to the toilet, and everyone can see him. But now, obviously, I'm realizing that's the whole point. But I guess the one question that I keep hearing from people over and over and over again in terms of that direct access to kids in childcare centres is, how does somebody get to be alone with a child for long enough to do so much harm?
Yes. Well, the thing is that someone sexually abusing a child doesn't take that long, because if we think about sexual abuse, we generally think genitals and genitalia, and we think, and I don't know what kind of audience you have, so I don't know whether to sanitize this or not, but we think about genitals and genitalia, coming into contact with each other. We think about sex, right? So the thing is that with regards to sexual abuse of any person, but even children, it doesn't necessarily include genitals coming into contact with each other. It can include other body parts. So when we look at penetrative offences in this case, it doesn't necessarily mean his genitals went anywhere near a child's genitals. It could have meant that his hands or mouth went near a child's genitals. Okay. So when we think about that, how long does that take? It doesn't take long. So I think the thing that we need to clear that up basically is that sexual abuse doesn't take long. It can be, it can be 15 seconds to actually do something like that. Now, the next part to that question is that how does someone get, unfettered access to children in a centre that's got glass walls and potentially CCTV and all of the things? Well, they're very sneaky. This person was attracted to children, put himself in a position where he could be near children and have unfettered access to children. Nappy changes, changing clothes, any kind of, water activity. They're all things that these types of people find which enables them to actually get access to children's genitals or children's body parts and private parts. So he was left alone and had time to do it. Not to mention he had his phone, he was able to record it, which is kind of a double-edged sword in that we don't want him to have that phone there to record it. But if he didn't have his phone there recording it, police might not have ever known that he did it. So I'm kind of glad that he recorded this stuff because now this person has been caught. And it's not a glad as in I'm excited about it. I'm just saying that it has helped so much in that police wouldn't have ever known these children were nonverbal and they were, or not yet had the brain development to explain what was happening to them. So the thing is that if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't be caught. So it's a double-edged sword. But my biggest thing in this space, and I've said it time and time again on the media in the last week, is that centres, approved providers and directors need to do better at making sure that they've got enough staff to actually adequately supervise children. And that is what has happened here. These centres were running at low levels. They called him as a casual because I think from all of the dates and times that he was there, he was a casual employee. He came in and he went and he came in and he went. He was given access to children. They didn't have enough people to ensure the actual, ratios, employee, educator to child ratios. He was putting his hand up to do nappy changes. He was, saying, hey, let me do it. I'll do it. So he was in an area which was kind of like hidden from cameras or hidden from supervision. There wasn't enough supervisors. So he was given access and time to do that. That is on the centres. That is not on anyone else. There was, from what I've seen reported and people have contacted me, people did bring their concerns to the management, to directors, and they were dismissed. So again, Centres and management are at fault here. Where is the accountability on them? The right centre will pay attention. They will do the adequate training to identify any kind of red flags and predatory behaviours, things that I teach. They'll make sure that they're mandatory reporting, and that they'll make sure that this person doesn't have unsupervised access to do those nappy changes all the time, and to be that person that gets access to children alone. And that's the kind of thing that I think that we need to be more focused on, is that this person had that access because the centres weren't doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we even had an email from our centre. Obviously, everyone's worried about it, and they're just letting us know that they're obviously worried too. Not any relation to any of those centres. And part of the reassurance was, and don't worry, we ensure that all our staff have working with children checks. And that makes me so angry, because all the working with children check it just means someone hasn't been caught yet. That's all. That little piece of paper
exactly.
means absolutely nothing.
Work.
Yes, it means nothing.
I know.
So it's not an assurance whatsoever. And I think people need to be aware of that, because it's really easy to just think, oh, well, thank God we're covered because they've had a working with children check. That doesn't mean police have gone through their phone and checked their yeah.
And the thing about it is that each state has different regulations around what conditions they have to be considered not fit for working with children. So, for instance, in Western Australia, they have to be charged with an offence against a child. In some other states, they have to be investigated. So the working with children's checks have different policies around when do they notify working with children's, and then also it's not a database that every state has access, state and territory has access to. So if you go from Queensland to New South Wales to Victoria, they're not all talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And as you so beautifully put, it doesn't mean anything if they haven't been charged. And we had this saying when I was investigating child sexual abuse: you only catch the dumb sex offenders. The rest of them are too smart to be caught. So we knew that if they were caught with images and videos, and they're really smart, and most child sex offenders have 7 to 14 victims in their lifetime, and this person had probably dozens because he had unfettered access to children, and people didn't do their job properly and kept him supervised, or anyone supervised. If you're working in early childhood education, it's to cover your own ass, basically, to ensure that someone else is in the room with you at all times. The ratio for under 2 is 1 to 4, one educator to 4 children. And so if you're constantly looking after 6 children, and you're constantly having to walk away because a child needs extra support, and you're leaving someone alone, that's on you as well. That is on you as well. So talk up, push back. As a parent, we can push back on these education centres and say, what are you doing to ensure that you have enough staff? What are you doing to ensure that my child is protected whilst you're, these education centres get $150 a day at minimum from the government, from the childcare subsidy. Then we add on our money that we pay to them as well. They're making thousands of dollars a day. One centre I know just down the road, I did the math, they have 65 kids a day in that centre. They're making $12,000 a day just in early childcare subsidies.
Oh my God.
You think about that. I mean, I know there's running costs and there's all of these things, but, they charge parents on top of what that subsidy is. And we need to start speaking with our money. We need to speak up. We need to push back. We need to stop taking what they do and how they do it and go, no, sorry, why aren't you sending some kids home because you don't have enough staff today? Because and I know that doesn't help you as a parent who's a working parent and stuff like that, but, the centres at the middle of this case, they've got 400 centres across Australia.
Wow.
They've got different names for different centres, and there's 400 of them, right? If they had to ensure that they had a full complementary of staff in every centre, they would that would be fine. But you know what? They just don't, and then they get sent, like, casual employees in, or they just run at a supervised lot, like, oh, under the roof is the term they use instead of in the room. So, oh yeah, we've got enough staff under the roof, so we're going to classify that as the children are supervised. They don't actually have them in the room with the children. And, these poor educators, they're not having lunches, they're not having breaks, they're not getting the adequate time to do what they need to do. And it's because these approved providers and these centre management are not doing the right thing. And if your centre is doing that, then try and find a different centre, because there's a lot of them that are just taking the piss, basically, with take your money and not provide the care.
Which is terrifying. It's terrifying to think. And again, I see some comments online that are just so unhelpful and cruel to working parents. Comments like, well, that's why you should stay at home with your kids.
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful, and it's not feasible for people. And
no parent can do that today.
No. And even take the finance out of it. What's wrong with a parent actually also needing to have other parts of their lives to make sure that they're the best parent that they can be, because they're fulfilled in all parts of their lives, which might mean socially being able to connect with other adults in the couple of days they might work a week, or, from a brain perspective, to be able to engage in something outside of the home, and all of the benefits that we know come from working, from self-esteem and mental health and all of those things. So to simply say we should just be at home with our kids and then they'll be safe, as we know, they won't necessarily be safe.
That's not true either. That's not true either. And, if you want me to spruik it off, 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually abused by the time they're 18. 90% is by someone, over 90% is by someone known to the child. And, 1 in 4 Australian adults have been sexually abused. 30 to 50% of that is by other children. And, there's so many other things that we could say. The thing about this case, is that this person was only able to abuse children because he wasn't supervised adequately. And yes, he obviously had an attraction to children, and he went into that industry because that's what he was attracted to and that's what he did. But guess what? They're in every industry. There is police officers who are attracted to children. There's judges, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's teachers, there's coaches. They're everywhere. It's not everyone, but it can be anyone, and they're everywhere. So, stop thinking that, oh, well, if we just stop men being in childcare, then that's going to stop it. No, because they'll just move to another industry where they can get access to children. Yeah. How about we start making it harder for them to get unsupervised access to children?
Yeah. And it sounds like it is a simple fix in terms of creating situations and policies where there is always supervision and there's always more than one person with a child. Nappy changes, can you not just have a policy that it always is 2 people in the room changing the nappy? I know there's an educator shortage, there's a teacher shortage everywhere, and maybe that's part of it. Even in our own centre, I know they're collapsing classes quite a bit, and in the mornings there'll be family groupings, they call them, and at the end of the day sometimes, and it can feel absolutely chaotic. But the only difference is, for me, I know all of those educators and they've been there forever, and all of my kids have had them as teachers at some point. There's almost zero casuals. Doesn't stop kid on kid access, and it doesn't stop someone if they, are intending to abuse someone. That, of course, people will find a way. But I feel like we've got enough in place there that it feels safe, but we're all still questioning it, and we're all still asking questions.
Of course.
And I think every parent
in
Australia is asking those questions. But it's just really hard to manage the people that don't want to think about any of this stuff, and then to feel like the pariah in these situations. And it even comes down to, I have felt like the weirdo since day one about car seats. I worked at the coroner's court for nearly 5 years. All I saw was sudden and unexpected death. All about the coroner's court. from being a police officer,
I
and
have been in there.
it's horrifically traumatic stuff, and I definitely still carry a lot of the trauma, the vicarious trauma from that. But it means that I have seen almost every possible terrible scenario, and I keep my kids in 5-point harness car seats. Even my 9-year-old is still in a car seat. And, you know, he will want to go to a birthday party where it's drop off at the friend's house and the dad's going to drive them all to the movies. And I say no, because I know in that family, there's a 4-year-old sitting in the front seat of the car and there's another kid just loose in the back seat. And I don't want to take the risk. And I have had to say to these families, like, in a cringy, embarrassed way, like, I'm so sorry, but like, oh, I'm probably just totally paranoid. But look, I've worked at the coroner's court. I've just seen too many terrible things, and I just prefer. And in cases where I don't know the family very well, I have gone out of my way to drive my kid to the party that's an hour away instead of him going with everybody in the car, just because I want to keep him safe. But I feel like such a loser doing it.
You're
And so,
not. Oh my gosh. Like, I think we need to normalize this. Like, I
yeah.
honestly think there is nothing wrong with being that parent. And one day your kids are going to get to adulthood and be a parent themselves, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, my mum did so much to keep me safe, because kids can die at any freaking point. Like,
Yes.
we spend most of their childhood trying to protect them from dying from random things. And then all of a sudden, here, just go off. Like,
Yeah.
go with random strangers.
Yeah.
Like, just go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you spent 5 years trying to keep them alive. Like, what the hell
Yes.
is wrong with us
Totally.
as
Like
parents? We need to really look at parenting.
I can't even leave you alone with a grape, but I'm going to put you in the house of a stranger you've never met before and let them drive you for an hour.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
And like, I mean, look, we are traumatized by that, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
I think you've got more than enough justification to not even say, well, this is just what we do as a family. We don't let people we don't know very well drive our kids around. Sorry, I'm just going
Yeah.
to bring them.
Yeah.
How about how about you stop feeling weird about it and like just fully own it and say, this is how I'm going to protect my kids and get them to adulthood. Because you know what? The next step for you is when they get their license, and you're going to be
Oh,
freaking the F out. So when
terrified.
my daughter got her license this year, I just about like had a panic attack the day she
Mm.
drove out of my driveway for the first
Oh.
time. I was like, and she's such a good little driver, such a good
Oh.
driver. And so I'm just like, but I just had a massive panic attack about, oh my gosh, like
Yep.
I've got no control now. And,
No.
that's another lesson for me to learn to let go of that control and let go of that, safety. Eventually I'm just going to have to let go, and she's going to go
Yeah.
off into the world. But it's like, you try so hard to keep your kids alive.
Mm-hmm.
and, then,
Totally.
and then people go, why don't you send them on camp? Why don't you send them to a random stranger's house you've never met? And your children only know because they see each other for 6 hours a day and they don't
Yep.
really know each other. Or,
Yep.
one obscure family member's like, yeah, we're going to go camping. Let's take all the kids camping. And you're like,
Yes.
hang on a second.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get it. And I don't think we
Yeah.
should be feeling bad about it.
No. So if only just the rest of the world will just catch up to this thinking, and then we can all be on the same page, and we can all say no smartphones, and we can all say, no sleepovers, and we can all say 5-point harnesses and all of the things. And then I'll feel better.
I just think, I got to a point where my daughter would say to me, well, and here's a little bit of, one day your kids will look back and they'll go, you know what? You did an awesome job, Mum. Because my daughter actually said to me a couple of years ago, thanks for keeping me off social media, because I actually had a childhood. All my friends who were on
Wow.
TikTok at 10 and, worried about this trend and looking pretty and this, that, and everything else. I was still playing with my Schleich and my Little Ponies and having unicorn T-shirts. And I
Amazing.
wasn't worried. And okay. At the time, it made me feel like I didn't fit in. But now I look back and I actually am glad that I had a bit more of a childhood than what everyone else had. And, and that's the thing. Like, I think it's with hindsight, and we're not meant to, they're not meant to have everything. They're meant to have times where they don't have the right clothes or the right tools or the right, the newest phone or whatever. They're meant to have that, because that creates resilience. That creates, teaching them how to wait for things and save for things. And like, it just makes better kids and makes better adults. So, and the last thing I would say is my daughter would say to me, "Oh, but Mum, everyone else is doing it." And I would say, "I don't give an F about everyone else. You're my baby. You're my child. It's my job to protect you. So, I don't care what anyone else is doing."
Yep. And my kids are hearing that all the time. I love it. They hear that all the time from me. Look, it's my job to keep you safe. I'm not interested in him. If his parents choose to have him loose in the car, that's up to them. But exactly. I can't let that happen to you.
Right.
Oh my God, Kristi, I could just unpack that amazing brain of yours all day long, but I have kept you quite a while. So if people want to follow you, get in touch, connect with you, use your work, you've got lots of offerings online. Tell us where to find you, what to do.
Yeah, so obviously Instagram's probably my biggest platform. So just follow me at Kristi McVee, or, go onto my website, which you can go kristimcvee.com, or my website is getting rebranded to my name because everyone knows my name more than my business, my company. So, but on there I have, free resources, paid resources, how to talk to your kids about body safety. I've got a really cool online safety guide that helps you talk about online safety to your kids and explain things to them. I've got my book. I've got so much on there, lots and lots of blogs. Today I actually released a blog on like the top 10 body safety books every protective parent should own.
Amazing.
So I released that blog this morning after everything that's been happening. And, we know that body safety and all of these like little lessons that we teach our kids, they have to be, it's not one and done and you walk away. It's like, you build on it like building blocks, and you build those beautiful relationships, and so that if something happens they feel safe to come and talk to you. So that's all on there, and I just go onto my website.
Amazing. Well, I will put all those links in the show notes, and particularly that blog from today. I'll be sending it to all my WhatsApp groups, and I will put it in the show notes too. But Kristi, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I know this has been a massive week or so for you. You must be exhausted. But thank you so much
I'm
for sharing.
definitely feeling it.
Yeah, I bet. You've been in demand. There's no joke. So thank you for making the time for us.
It's a sad thing to be in demand for.
Yeah. But having said that, thank God we've got people like you with this expertise so that we can shine the light on all of the things that we can be doing, so we don't have to all sit here as parents just feeling terrified of this big scary thing and not knowing what to do. So your exhaustion is for all of our benefit, and I know I speak for everyone when I say thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for your time today.
Thanks, Fiona.